all for joining us today, and we welcome all those who have been here before and all who are here for the first time. We hope that you will find the experience interesting and stimulating and will continue to participate in these events. Children of Jewish Holocaust survivors believe that there is a moral imperative to prevent the next one. If we fail, the ramifications will surely extend beyond the Jewish people. I am Doris Wise-Montrose. I'm president. If you have any questions about our organization, please feel free to ask anyone who's walking around wearing a name tag. We are delighted and honored today to have as our guest speaker Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. I have often seen Reverend Peterson on Fox News, and each time was immediately struck by his honesty and forthrightness. In my opinion, no one could ever have any doubt about where he stands on any issue. Therefore, I was aware of his character before I knew who he was, or his background, or the work that he did in the community. Reverend Peterson will speak to us today on how lies are dividing the races instead of truth that would unite us. And since we are all in this together and all share a mutual enemy, we can only prevail if we unite. Reverend Peterson is a frequent guest on major TV networks and radio programs where he discusses the domestic and foreign threats confronting America. He has gained notoriety for his uncompromising attacks on liberal orthodoxies ranging from support of identity politics to appeasement in the face of militant Islam. His unflappable, can-do attitude and absolute commitment to truth are the perfect medicine for a value-challenged society. He is the founder and president of BOND, Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny. Reverend Peterson will take questions following his talk, and he will also sign books after all of that. At this time, we ask that everyone please turn off their cell phones and their pagers, and we welcome Reverend Peterson.
Thank you very much. I had to turn off my own cell phone here. I have it on the vibrator thing, but still I want to take a risk. Yeah, so I appreciate you having me here. Thanks for coming out too. Thank you very much. First, I want to say thanks to the bond members some of the bond members who showed up today right after our Sunday morning meeting, and they're all sitting in the corner by themselves. I'm going to talk to you about uniting the races with truth instead of dividing them with lies. I am a founder and president of a nonprofit organization called BOND, Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny, and our purpose is to rebuild the family, rebuild the man. We've been around now for 18 years. We have a home for young men that we bring from the country, and we show these young men how to overcome anger first. They have to work. If they haven't finished school, they need to finish school, start businesses. We also encourage them to get married before having children out of wedlock. We have an after-school character building program for young boys as young as 13 to 18. We started out with 13 to 18, but now we're working with 10 to 18 because the situation is getting worse. And we help these boys, with their homework. We talk to their teachers. We show them how to deal with the issues of life. And as you all know, especially in the inner cities, the public schools are absolutely out of control. And so these boys are having a tough time at home by not having two parents together. Then they go to school and they have to deal with hell all day long. So it's really bad for them. But we counsel with them and work with them and show them how to overcome the situation. I'm proud to tell you that we have not received one penny from the government. We have not asked for a dime from the government. I believe that the less government in your life, the better off you are. It's about we the people, not we the government. We also we're known for the National Day of Repudiation of Jesse Jackson. You heard of Jesse Jackson, right? Yeah, we heard. And for 5 years, we held the National Day of Repudiation of Jackson on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. And we did it on his birthday because we want to show the contrast between Dr. King's dream and Jesse Jackson's nightmare. You know, Dr. King said that one day black Americans would be judged by the contents of character and not color. Well, Jackson's nightmare is that most blacks are judged by their color because they lack character. And here's the evidence. Nationwide, you have 70% of black babies born out of wedlock, 70. And in some of the states, like Indiana, for example, you have 80% of black babies born out of wedlock in one state alone. In the state of Virginia and South Carolina, you have 70 to 80% of black babies born out of wedlock. There's no outcry about that at all. We also, Dr. King said that one day we will become one nation under God. Jackson's nightmare is that we are more divided today as a race than any other time in history. And, you know, I grew up on a plantation down in Alabama. And I remember for colors only signs, for whites only, we would go to the movie theater. And when I went to a movie once while growing up in Alabama because blacks had to sit at the balcony and whites were downstairs and we were not allowed to come together. But not once did I hear my grandparents or parents tell us that we should hate white folks. You know, they said if you work hard, do the right thing, treat people the way you would like to be treated, you can make it in America. But what happened was, about 50 years ago, after Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, Jackson and others took his dream and turned it into a nightmare. They perverted it. Dr. King talked about love and overcoming and not hating your enemy. Well, Jackson and the so-called civil rights leader took that message and said, white folks ought to blame. America is a racist society. Black folks need to hate. And so black Americans started to hate. The government became the daddy of the family because they said to black people, well, you can't make it because of racism. You can't make it because of slavery. And for the first time in the lives of most America, the man left the home because you couldn't be on the government, depend on government, and have a father in the home. So the father left the home, and the government became the daddy of the family, and the racist civil rights leaders became the head of the people. And you have to keep them demoralized in order to control them. So what they do is they tell black people that you can't make it because of racism, you can't make it because of that old white man. And so that causes them to become angry and resentful. And when you hate someone, you cannot come together as one. And so as long as they're in that mindset, Jackson and others could go to the government and say, hey, look, racism is out here, black folks can't make it. We need more money, we need more programs. And when the government bring in the money, it goes into the pockets of the so-called civil rights leaders and most of the black preachers who are not called by God, but by their mama. So they keep them angry. And if you, how many people here have been married before? You ever been married?
Before what? Before.
In your life. In your life. You've been married before. You all married or been married?
39 years.
39 years. This your husband? And he's still smiling. I want to give you a quick example of what anger can do for you or do to you. And this is why Jackson and Al Sharpton and Louis Farrakhan and NAACP and others are constantly looking for things that look like racism in order to control blacks. When you first meet a woman, you thank God for that woman. Like, wow, this is a wonderful woman. Thank you, God. She's been sent from heaven, right? And then the moment you become angry at her, it clouds your view. Now you go back and ask God, why did you give me this one? This is not from you, Lord. This is straight out of hell, right? Well, the weird thing about it, it's the same woman, but because you're angry, you don't see her in the same light. Because anger clouds your view. And so what Jackson and others are doing is they're keeping black folks angry and separating them from the races so blacks cannot see that things have changed and racism is not holding them back. That it is the lack of moral character. You have abortion out of control within the black community. Something like 16 million black babies have been aborted since the early 70s. And every day, over 1,500 black babies are aborted. And not only are they killing the children inside the womb, it's also traumatized the woman. She becomes mentally and emotionally destroyed. But you can't get Jackson and those guys to do anything about it, because if black people were to wake up, then they would end up on welfare. You know, Jackson and others would be looking for a job. And so they don't want them to wake up because it is bad for business. And the unfortunate thing about this whole deal is that white Americans, not all, but most, have allowed themselves to be intimidated by one word, and that word is racism. Correct. They say if you tell the truth about black people, if you deal with the issue of race and morality, then somehow or another you are racist. And because white people are giving into that, they're giving power over to Jackson and others to take over. Because when you don't stand up to your enemy, you're empowering them. And they take control of your life by intimidating you. The same thing with your children. If you let your kids have their way, they will run you out of the house. Have you noticed that? They'll take over the home because you have allowed them to just have their way. And by white American giving into this idea that if you tell the truth you're racist, it has empowered the so-called civil rights leaders. And it's unfortunate, and I want to encourage you to get over that anger, to get over that fear, because if you don't, it's over for America. Jeremiah Wright Jr., for an example, one of the most racist black preachers in America today, next to Louis Farrakhan. Jeremiah Wright Jr. teaches something called black liberation theology. You know, when I read the scriptures, it's about the spirit, it's about the heart of man, and not the color of man. But he's been teaching that they want to prove that they're not racist. That's not going to prove it. The only way that we can change the hearts and minds of black Americans, the only way we can change this idea that America is a racist society, we have to change the hearts of black people. Physical proof is not enough. We have Dr. Condoleezza Rice in one of the highest positions that you can have. That didn't change their minds. We have Clarence Thomas holding the highest position, a black man. That did not change their minds. You have liberals, congressmen, and women. That didn't change their minds. Anger and resentment is a spirit, and only the spirit can change that. A physical things cannot change your heart. And we need to be honest about that. Most blacks today are racist toward white Americans. It is not white Americans racist toward blacks. White folks have done all that they can do to show black people that they're not racist. Everything that we have asked for, they have done it. We ask, anybody doubt that?
No.
I can prove it. We asked white Americans, okay, give us the freedom to move about and have our being. They said, okay, right on. They joined forces with us, which was the right thing to do. Now we are protected by the same laws that white Americans are protected by. Then they said, we want to integrate the schools and the communities. So they forced integration, which was a big mistake, because you cannot force someone to love you. You ever tried to force someone to love you? They drive you insane. Because everything you do, you can never do enough to get them to love you. Love is a voluntary thing. You have to want to love someone. Then they said, well, no, we can't make it because of racism. We need affirmative action based on color. So they gave affirmative action. And now black boys and girls are getting to colleges and things around the country, and many of them are dropping out because they're not earning their way. They're being given these things because they're black. And they drop out of school feeling worse about themselves than they did prior to getting in. Then they say, well, you know what? You've given us everything so far, and there's still one thing missing. We want the white woman. And white Americans said, okay, you can have our woman. So they gave up the white woman, and they're still not happy. Isn't that right?
Yes.
So there's nothing else to give. The only thing that we have to do now is to be honest, tell the truth, so that they can start thinking about their own personal anger and start to get over it. Jackson and others have said to them, black people can't be a racist because they don't own anything. Well, I'm a living witness here to tell you that's not true. Louis Farrakhan, for example, is loved by Jeremiah Wright Jr. and many in the black community now. Louis Farrakhan recruits from the prisons and jails around the country because it is easy to seduce blacks who are angry. And so he goes to the jailhouse, make them feel good about being wrong. He brings them into his organization and then brainwash them. And you can get them to do whatever you want them to do when they're brainwashed and angry about that. We need to wake up, folks, and realize that this battle that we're fighting is a spiritual battle. It has nothing to do with the physical. It's not blacks against whites or whites against blacks. It's good versus evil, right versus wrong. And if we don't deal with this in a spiritual way, with honesty and truth, it's only going to get worse rather than getting better. Illegal alien, for example, is having a negative impact on the black community and our country like nothing else before. For example, in South Central Los Angeles, Canoga Park, Highland Park, and Harbor City, the illegal alien gangs have joined forces and they're killing innocent blacks who are not involved in gangs. It is so bad that in Canoga Park, the police department sent out a report to black folks telling them to watch their backs because they're being gunned down at random. And it's happening like that across the state. Jamil Shaw, you heard about him?
Yes.
Yeah. 17-year-old black boy was not involved in gang. You know, I met his father, I met his mother, good people. They work hard to make sure that their kids do the right thing. This illegal alien get out of jail on Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon he shoots Jamil in the head and in the chest and kills him 3 doors down from his home, from Jamil's home. And so they're trying to get Jamil's law passed because in this state you're not allowed to ask. When they arrest these folks, you can't ask them if they're from this country or not. So they're trying to get that changed. But that's just one story. That's why we the people, once again, have to unite together as American citizens and start to fight back before it's too late. We got to do it. I open up my radio show by saying that I'm not an African American. I don't have an afro. I have an Amerifro. There are no African drums beating in my chest. I have the American guitar playing in my heart. I am as black as the ace of spades. As a matter of fact, if you turn these lights out, all you will see is my teeth and my eyes. But I am 100% American. I don't care how I got here. I heard that we were, sold by the blacks and the Arabs and to the white man. And the white man put us in a little tight ship or boat and brought us here, right? Now, it sounded as though the ride was tough. It's like riding on an airplane from Los Angeles to New York, and they put you in the back. You ever had a ride like that? It is not easy. Those little seats are so small, and then they put everybody right next to you, right? It's a rough ride for 5.5 hours. But once you get there, you're like grateful for it. You're like, thank you, God, I finally made it, right? And that's how I feel about my country. I'm glad that I'm here, and I show that by loving my country, treating people the way I would like to be treated. I believe strongly in the family and in the Constitution. So I give back to my country rather than hating my country and separating my country from it. And that's why we must tell the truth in order to wake up black Americans so that they can see that they are in the greatest country in the world, they are Americans, and start to appreciate it and give back to it. Otherwise, the folks who have died for no reason at all. It was they died in vain because the folks are not living in the right way and giving back to their country. The last point, and then I'll take some questions from you. We are at war. We are at war, folks, with people who hate us because we are a Christian nation and we support Israel. That's why they hate us. And if we go along to get along with these radical Muslims, we're all going to suffer for it. We won't be able to, I was in Israel a couple of years ago, and I have to tell you, I love Israel. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here. When I was growing up, black Americans talked about Israel, and you can sing about Israel in the church, and they talked about it from the scriptures. And this is a new thing where blacks are starting to hate the Jews. That's the influence of the so-called civil rights leaders. because blacks have been told the Jews are coming into your community and sucking the life out and building their own community. When I say that blacks should learn from them and see what they're doing and do the same thing, rather than being mad about it, learn from them. But I was in Israel and I noticed that, they had military men and women everywhere. They were concerned about being blown up in a restaurant or whatever, right? Well, if we don't stand up and fight against this evil in our country, we're going to be living the same way. If we go along just to get along, we're going to pay a price for it. It's not personal, it is spiritual. And these people, these radical Muslims are taught that you can hate your enemy, you can lie to your enemy in order to get to them. Now, I'm not going to be convinced that that has changed until I see them coming out and protesting publicly against that. And when I see them getting involved, then I would be convinced that a change has taken place. But as long as they're quiet on it, they're not saying anything, and we are trying to appease them, I'm never going to feel happy. And I want you to do that. Judge people based on their character and not on their color, and stand up for what is right. This is the greatest country in the world. Everybody and their mama are trying to come here. We can't even get it. We can't get the folks to leave, right? And so there is nowhere else to go. This is it. You can't run to the valley anymore, to the mountain, or to the river. We got to at some point unite together and fight for a common cause. And I believe that Americans are worth fighting for. And I'm committed to it. And believe me, I was a weak, poor, pitiful, pathetic, hateful person at one time. Especially when I moved to Los Angeles and started listening to the so-called civil rights leaders. They taught me to hate too. They blamed on the white man, and I was young and I fell for it. And when you hate somebody, what you put out come back on you. You don't have peace when you hate. God said that we should love one another. Now, love doesn't mean go along with what's wrong. You speak up and deal with it, but don't hate the person. And then you can overcome anything. There's nothing that can stop you. And I'm a living witness to that. All right? I want to take some questions and answers questions from you. Let me take this young man first, as I saw him first. Yes, sir.
First of all, I just want to compliment you how you're such a truth teller, and it's so liberating to hear it.
Thank you.
You say things that I wouldn't dare say. And I guess you can say it like So that's why. And I like your back and forth on the Larry Elder show with that woman.
Oh yeah.
You always win. You always
Pearl Jr.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You always make him look like a fool.
That's fun. I love that.
It's hilarious.
Let me just say, and then I'll let you finish. You can tell the truth, but you have to love the truth more than you love yourself, your family, or anything. And when you love the truth more than anything else, you're not afraid of losing anything. And the wonderful thing about God is when you love Him, and if one door should close on you, another one will open. I've been banned from radio stations in this city. I've been called every name in the book and then some. I've had my telephones tapped. I've been called nigger. You ever heard the word nigger? Anybody ever heard that word nigger? You're not even allowed to hear it if you're white, huh? Yeah. I've been called nigger so much by black people that I was thinking about changing my middle name to Jesse Nigger Peterson. But you know the beauty about it, this, when God changed my heart, He put an invisible spiritual bubble around me, and words don't hurt me. They can't get to me. They roll off my back. That's why when you see me in those debates, if you notice, the first thing that the people do, they try to attack me personally. Oh, you can't speak that well. You don't know English. I'm like, yeah, you're right about it. And, but I stay on the message. I want to get the truth out there and hope that people will wake up. You need to start speaking the truth. And don't be afraid.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Yeah. But I got to tell you, we need everybody to tell the truth. You just can't wait on the few blacks that are out there to tell the truth. You run into black people all the time. And don't be afraid to tell the truth. But if they get angry, just stand there and look at them while they're yelling and screaming. And when they come down, you throw a little more truth and let them yell. And they'll get over it. Yes.
Reverend Peterson, you mentioned earlier that schools are out of control in the inner city.
Yes.
They are, and other places, I might add, but
Yes.
even more so in the
Even
inner
more
city.
so.
I think the best thing that could happen educationally for inner city children are vouchers.
Yes.
School choice. I think you'd agree. Blacks seem to want vouchers, I've heard.
As a matter of fact, we tried to get the voucher bill passed, and Jesse Jackson and others stepped in and said, no, this is bad, and blacks wouldn't vote for it. Because not all blacks are like this, but they won't think for themselves. Prior to the Civil Rights Movement, black Americans thought for themselves. They didn't have black leaders to think for them, or the black preacher. They thought for themselves. But they have literally given up thinking. And so if Jackson and those guys are against it, most of them are not going to go for it, even though they want it. They still won't do it. That's what brainwashing would do to you when you're an angry person. Yes, sir.
Yeah, could you step back in time for a couple of years? I remember Bill Cosby came out and chastised the blacks for, I guess, speaking the language and not taking responsibility and so forth. And I thought it was a very refreshing thing for a person of such stature to say, but he was roundly criticized and shut up.
Yeah.
What was this? Can he be reelected?
Bill Cosby, if you remember, Bill Cosby was the darling of the black community. They loved him. But as soon as he came out with some truth, he became the enemy of the black community. Because the truth hurts the ego, and they don't want to be reminded that they're wrong. And it was bad for the so-called black leadership, because if blacks realize this and take control, like I said earlier, they're going to end up on the soup line, Jackson and others. And I guarantee you, with all that is in me, and I've been saying for the last 18 years that Jesse Jackson is not a good man. I was out there on the forefront when nobody else would say it. But he's an evil man. He's of his father the devil. But that's why we got to rebuild the family. When God decided one day, you know what, I think I'll make a family. It wasn't like he didn't have anything else to do. He saw that it was good to have a family. But he didn't create this family so we could turn them over to a non-profit organization or some black leaders. It's the responsibility of fathers and mothers to guide their children in the right way to go, to be a good example and point the way for their children, not some civil rights leaders. And that's where blacks have made their mistake. Yes, ma'am. I'll come to you next.
I am very disturbed about the fact that I'm finding so much more racism now than when I was in school in the 60s.
Yeah.
For example, the colleges and universities have separate dorms for blacks, for Hispanics, for Chinese, for Asians, for whites. They have separate graduations.
Yeah.
What is going on? What is this?
We are allowing it to happen. We are allowing evil to become the norm and good to become the outnorm. People don't realize that it's a spiritual battle, and if you don't deal with evil, it'll destroy you, your household, the cat, the dog, the grass, the paint on the house. It doesn't stop. And it's never going to change until we stand up and say, this is not about racism, this is wrong. This is immoral, it is wrong. We're supposed to be one nation under God. But if you are afraid, there is no end to what they would do. It doesn't make sense to be having a black graduation or a Hispanic graduation. Kids are supposed to come together as one. But you're allowed to happen by being afraid to speak up. That's why it happened. Let me take this young lady and then I'll come back. Yes.
As you're talking, what comes to me is that what is happening, not just with the black community, of course, and what is happening with, having this apartheid, more or less, that's going on now.
Yes.
It's the same thing that England, in order to conquer the world, as they tried to do, and the sun never set on the British Empire, they divided and conquered.
Yes.
The thing is, it's exactly what happened after they decided to have a, quote, Palestinian state.
Yes.
What happened was the Jews and the Arabs were getting along in most communities, especially on the West Bank, the Shomron and the Judea. They're getting along fine. We have friends that live, and I revisited recently, my husband and I, and they had neighbors that, they would integrate, they would have to go to each other. That's right.
I don't agree with it.
Excuse me, I'm telling you about people who have personal experience.
Yeah, hold on.
In Kejimim, where we have friends, where she is the assistant mayor, and we were visiting there recently, there are communities nearby, and we have it from the horse's mouth, from the people that live there. We went there and we lived there with them. We were there with them. And they pointed out that this neighborhood and this neighborhood and this neighborhood, if the Arabs had a wedding, here's the invitation. Here's the invitation that we got to the wedding. When we had a wedding, they had, or a simcha, you know, a nice event, you know, they would do the same thing. Once they started talking about dividing, and this will be Palestinian, and this will be this, there's no more of this. It's over. So it's the same thing that's happening, and I agree. I'm not, you know, I'm not what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's that the principle is the same: divide and conquer.
That's right. And also, sir, you cannot interrupt a Jewish woman.
That's right. You've been practicing.
It's like trying to interrupt a black woman. You don't interrupt me. But she's right, I agree. Yes, sir.
Yeah, was there a trigger that kind of made you go from the dark side to the light side, or was it kind of gradual?
A good question. I'll make a long story short. I write about it in my book, Scam. Not Scam, From Race to Responsibility. I write about how I overcame. You know, after a while, I started to question things. I'm like, if America is such a bad place, and white folks are holding me back as a black person, how come Jackson and others are doing so well? You know, their kids are going to the best schools, they have big-time jobs, and I'm thinking something's wrong with this picture here, you know? And so I started to question things, and that's when I realized that I had been brainwashed too. They had taught me to be hateful and resentful, and in that they were controlling me. And when I saw that, you know, God caused my heart to change. I stopped hating. First, I was already a little angry because my father wasn't there for me. My mother got pregnant when she was very young, and my father denied that I was his, so she became very angry and married my stepfather before I was born, because in those days it was immoral. It was a shame to having children out of wedlock, so they would get married. And she married my stepfather, and when I was born, I didn't want my stepfather, I wanted my dad. And I had this yearning inside of me for my father. I couldn't help myself. So I would ask my mother about my father. Where's my dad? Why can't I be with him? And she would say, oh, forget about him. He's no good. He doesn't love you. Forget about him. And I became resentful toward her because I thought she was wrong for trying to keep me away from him. And as you know, when you resent people, you take on that same identity because you become like what you hate. And so I suffer for that, and that's why I was open when I moved to Los Angeles at 18. It was easy for me to believe the lie that was coming from the civil rights leaders because I already had this anger for my parents. Now I didn't know I resented them because the anger felt like love, but I now realize that that emotion that we get comes from resentment. But anyway, so when I started to question myself, God allowed me to see that I first resented my parents, and that resentment, because it's wrong to hate, was coming back on me. And so when I forgave my parents, I went to my mother and told her what I just told you. And I said, I'm sorry for resenting you. What you did to me was wrong, but I'm wrong for holding it against you. And when I did that, God forgave me, and He gave me perfect peace. He took away all of my insecurity, my doubts, my worries, all that stuff I had. He removed it away from me, and that's what changed my life. Then so I just stopped hating everything and everybody around me. And that's why I have to say to you that the worst thing that can happen to a child, whether male or female, black or white, Jewish or non-Jewish, is to hate your fathers. When you turn children away from their fathers, you turn them away from their own identity. And they grow up empty and looking for love in all the wrong places, boys and girls. We have to learn to love our fathers. We may not necessarily agree with everything that they do, and mothers, but we got to love them, because when you hate them, you separate them from God.
Would you help me with my law practice? Because that's the message that I try to get across.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's the worst thing that can happen.
The courts don't help.
And that's what they did during the civil rights movement. They said the father can't be in the home, only the mother and the government. And so they separate these kids from their fathers, and now they're growing up feeling unloved. You know, I believe that there's a spiritual order in life. That order is God in Christ, Christ in man, man over woman, and woman over children. And when you don't love that order, you will suffer. And there's nothing worse than a weak man. Women, I'm going to tell you, men, women hate weak men. Isn't that right, ladies?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Now, amen. There you go. Now, when you're strong men, they're still going to come at you and challenge you, right? But they don't want you to give in. They want you to be strong. And strong is not necessarily a physical thing, but do what's right. Not what you feel, but what is right. And that's what women need. And when they don't have that, they hate weak men. So you got to learn to stand up right. And if you, the one way that they have managed to destroy our country is by first destroying the family and weakening the man. Because the man is the spiritual head of his family. And so when you weaken him, it's easy to seduce the woman and children. And that's what's happening in our country, period, but especially in the black community. Let me take this young lady.
You're the one.
Well, I'm 59, so everybody's young now.
I was wondering what your thoughts were in regard to the influence, particularly in the United States, of the Muslim, the Muslim influence on black people in the United States, whether it be through the jails where they're converted, so to speak, or in general. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think it's something which is very scary.
And it's very important, and it's such an important question. You know, I've been saying for years that even before we've been invaded by the other folks who've just come in, Louis Farrakhan has been recruiting for a long time in the prisons and jails. And he's recruiting people who are angry. They're angry at America. They're angry because they don't have parents, the right to have parents. And they're bringing these folks into their organizations, and they're joining together as people of color, and they can convince these folks to do the same thing. And I'm concerned that that's what the radical Muslim would do too. They tell black people, look at how you suffered. We are people of color. We got to come together and give them a few bucks. It is over. And that's why we cannot appease these folks. We got to stand up to them and be honest, because blacks are being used in their state of anger. And I'm very concerned about that. Absolutely concerned. And we all need to be concerned about it. That's why we got to deal with the anger in the black community. It's that anger that's keeping them open to be used in that manner.
But this is more politically influencing than just freeing their anger.
Yeah.
Or using their anger.
Yeah, they don't.
In this particular time in our lives, and with the Muslim aim to take over the world, and they've had very big steps in Europe and in other countries.
Yeah.
And here, we sort of ignore it. We're not.
That's right. Well, they see that we are afraid in this country, to be honest, for fear of being called a racist. So they've come in and they're using that same thing too to manipulate. If you speak out against these folks, you're a racist. And people are cowering down to that. That's why I said you got to overcome fear. God said perfect love casts out fear. Because when you're not afraid, you won't appease your enemy. You'll deal with your enemy. I was in Israel, long story short, and we're traveling around the country, and I'm looking at the Muslims who are there. They live right across the road from the Jews, right? The Jews are like keeping their communities clean and beautiful and living a life, and they're letting their areas turn into ghettos. And it reminds me of the black community. They're so angry that they won't even clean up their own communities. And it's that anger. I mean, their city could be as beautiful as any other city. But they are not doing that. They just want to kill you. They just want to kill you.
They want death.
They want death instead of life. And that's why it's the same kind of thing that's happening here in America. Same type of thing is happening here in America. That's why you got to overcome the anger, folks. It's not your friend. Yes, ma'am. Let me take that here.
I'd like to know more about your organization in the black community. How does that work, and what are you doing? How are you doing? How does it?
Well, as I said in the introduction, we have a home for young men, and we're bringing them in from around the country. We show them how to overcome their anger. They have to work and pay rent and keep the place going because that's real life. We encourage them to get married before, having children out of wedlock, and to judge people based on character and not color. Treat people the way you would like to be treated. And we have some good service. One of our guys, he came to us at 15, I think, and he just graduated from Stanford Law School. after graduating from Princeton. He went on to finish high school, went to Princeton. We have young men who are starting their own businesses, getting married. They're moving on with life because once they drop that anger, they now have the confidence that they can overcome and do whatever they want. And we it's word of mouth. I do a lot of media stuff. We send out newsletters, and that's how people hear about us as well. And we deal with all races. We deal with all races. It's not just blacks, but our primary focus is on the black man. Yes, ma'am?
And we do workshops.
Yeah, we do workshops. You were at one of our workshops. You gotta come to one of our meetings. It's gonna blow your mind.
How about you? How do I find out about this?
We have some newsletters here, and it has all the information in there. And just call us up and get on the email list, and we'll notify you.
Do you speak at public schools?
I do. Public school, churches, organizations all around the country. And I've had people to walk out on me and all kind of stuff. But the ones that are ready to hear the truth, those are the ones I'm trying to reach. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just thinking and saying that we should confront and tell it as it is.
Yes.
And you know, the matter of PC, politically correct, stands in the way of that. So the people are doing the same because it's not their business, they think.
Yeah.
And that's what allows.
But the PC stuff is for men and women who do not believe in God. Speaking up is for men and women who believe in God. So don't associate yourself with the world around you. We're called to live a higher standard, to shine the light on the darkness. And so let them have their little PC stuff, and we stand for truth, and I guarantee you we will win in the end. Because the truth is powerful. Did I see a hand way back there somewhere? Okay. Okay, let me take this young lady, Raymond, then I'll come to you.
Before my question, when I talk to people, I used to be afraid to say what I really thought, but now the first thing I say, I'm not politically correct, I'm going to just tell you what I feel, which I feel is the truth.
Yep.
And people are like, and I'm doing it, and
Yep.
it's okay.
That's right.
Because I got tired of holding back what I really felt.
That's right.
You know, and if you know the facts, then you could really express yourself well, and you hope you change their mind. If not, it's okay.
That's right.
My question is...
as a matter of fact, just
yes.
add, if you know what's right, you have a responsibility to tell the truth. It's your responsibility to tell it. And if you notice, if you don't tell the truth, it plays on your mind later. You get mad at yourself and everybody around you because you didn't speak up for yourself.
Right.
You have a responsibility to tell the truth.
Exactly. I worked for the Anti-Defamation League for 14 years, several years ago, and we were constantly worried about the black community, and we did so much for the black community and Hispanic community. And then you get a survey that is the highest in years that there's anti-Semitism in the black community.
Yeah.
I haven't read anything the last few years. I'm not in that organization anymore. What do you know about anti-Semitism in the black community? Is it just as high, and how could we change it? Since Jews fought for civil rights for the black people and lost their lives.
That's right.
Nobody knows that, I don't think.
I can remember when I had that kind of hatred. I used to listen to the black politicians in the community say, well, the Jew is to blame. They come into our community, they take our money and they move out. And they were encouraging that kind of anger, and there was no one around to say, hey, these folks are wrong. They're teaching you to hate instead of to love. And that's how that thing started to change. It wasn't like that when I was growing up. I only heard it when I moved to Los Angeles and was listening to the black politicians. And some of the black preachers are teaching the same thing.
Now it's still
now,
going on.
right? It's worse now than ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the reason that it's worse now than ever is because you're cowering down to it. You're afraid to say, no, this is not true. And if you don't stop it, it grows. So that's why it's worse now than any other time in history.
And they need to learn the history.
Yeah, but we got to tell them. We got to be honest about it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you're talking to me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll give you an interesting example of a problem of building character. My mom always criticized me, saying that I was always hard on the black people. I asked her that's because they were never hard enough on themselves as a race. And I can say that about a lot of the many other people simply because they do not ask themselves, should I do this or should I do that, and ask themselves, what price am I willing to pay for it?
Yeah, it's about responsibility, self-responsibility, doing what's right. And if you do that, folks, you can make it in America. I don't care who is against you, you can make it. And we knew that growing up. But when the civil rights movement took over the lives, that started to change. They lost that by depending on the government and believing the lie. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to know, going back in time a little bit, could you give me your reaction to the decision when O.J. was acquitted? The reason I'm saying that is, like, how did you, I mean, we all know that it was, we believe that it was because of the fact that they were nullifying the jury, you know,
Right.
yes. But the thing is, how did you react to it?
Well, at the time I was living in Oregon and I was doing a radio show there. And I said on the radio, when I found out that there were more blacks on the jury than any other race, I said then, O.J. is not going to jail. Forget it, it's over. Even if they were standing there looking at him killing Nicole, they just stand there and look at it. To them, it was payback time. It's time that black folks pay white folks back. And so there was no way that he was going to jail. That's what I said.
Do you see a nexus between that and what's happening now? It's payback time now?
Oh yeah, payback.
It's the same thing.
Anytime they can do stuff to cause misery, or in their mind cause misery for white Americans, then yes, it's payback time.
So it's just a continuation, basically?
On and on. That's why we have to stand up and tell the truth.
So if it was a black white, they would have voted him guilty?
He'd probably be in jail.
Okay.
Yeah. But because she was white, no way that they are.
They're much more racist.
And we got to say that so they'll start looking at it. But if you don't say it, their ego won't allow them to see it. You got to say it. And then they'll start to think about it and wake up. And that's what love is.
I just want to give you one example. Some years ago, in my practice, I pointed out that the woman who was taking care of, an older woman who was taking care of some children, that the children she had were not her children. She was black, very black.
Yeah.
And the thing is, these children were obviously white. The father, the mother was white. But she said that the father was black. I looked at these children and I said, they're not black.
Yeah.
There's no black in them. I brought that up in court. The entire black social workers group from Department of Children and Family Services wanted to get me removed because I dare speak the truth.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the head judge, the presiding judge, came down and he took over the case. Instead of having the trial, you know, the regular judge, because he said, he's made an announcement, Miss Daniels is not racist. I know her.
Yeah.
She's not racist. I know her heart. But the thing is, because I dare say that the emperor didn't have clothes, you know, because I dare challenge, and the thing was that I got it through the back channels from one of the social workers that I knew who was black, who was a friend of mine, who said to me at the time, she said, you know, it's not the question whether, it doesn't matter what the truth is, just like with O.J. It didn't matter whether this kid was, you know, everybody knew or could see that these kids weren't black.
Yeah.
The reason was because we wanted to take them away. You know, I wanted these kids to be taken away from this woman and not prevented her to go to kids to go to guardianship. And he said, it's not that. It's payback time.
Yeah.
Because at that point in the late 80s and early 90s, there was still a lot of whites that were, you know, associating their guilt by adopting black children.
That's
and
right.
the black community was pissed off about it. Instead of saying, you're saving these children from foster homes, from the streets, from whatever, the fact that, you know, liberal Jews, for the most part, and a lot of others, were taking in black children, you know, like the movie stars are now.
Right.
That was creating a headache for them.
Yeah.
So now, it was the fact that here, I'm daring to take a white children from a black, and I was called racist. I mean, it was all through the corporate house. And I stood up there and I said, you can tell me what you got, damn well, please.
Good.
The fact is, these children are what they are, and I'm not racist.
Right on. You
That's
need
right.
more like, your husband is here?
My husband got, you know, he's looking at me.
Oh,
he's a long-suffering guy sitting in the back.
hiding. But you were right on the money.
Well, the thing is, my husband is a Holocaust survivor, so
Oh,
the
good.
thing is, you know, that was nothing compared to me.
That's right. You know, I debated, I gave a talk to the black social workers over at the Marriott Hotel. They became so angry. All of them walked out except about 3.
Oh, yes.
And they're like walking out screaming and
They are so
yelling.
racist, it's
Yeah,
incredible.
it's awful. They are absolutely racist.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, no, I know. I am so familiar with them. It's not even funny.
Right now, I'm involved in a lawsuit where my client is a white Jewish woman.
Yeah.
And we're suing for reverse discrimination.
Oh, good.
And the thing is, but what's happening is, you know, if this were a black woman, if the same thing happened to her, they would have given her $20 million.
Oh, yeah, that's
now,
right.
because she's white, Jewish, they can shit all over her.
Yeah.
Excuse my French.
You have a very nice way of putting words.
I use euphemisms.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to have to move a little faster. Every day on my radio show, every interview I do, God bless me to come out on top. Because I stay with the truth. And when they overreact, I don't overreact to them overreacting. You know, just stay with the truth, and the truth will show itself. And that's what I do. That's the way I live my life. And just stay with truth. There's so many, so many incidents like that. If you want to hear some wild stuff, listen to my radio show. Right now, we're not. You can hear it live on the internet in LA, but we're on in other states around the country. So, and it is in South Carolina, for example, it's in the black community. All hell is breaking loose. And so make sure you tune in and just watch how I deal with it. I understand that my battle is not physical, it is spiritual. And I'm not taking it personal, I stay with truth.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do if you want to win this battle. Okay, we're going to move fast. Yes, sir.
Are you out there yourself talking like this?
I am. I'm sorry?
Are you out there yourself talking like this? Or do you have other leaders there?
There are a few. And I want to make that point. There are other black Americans who are out there doing the same thing. Now, you don't hear about them because the media don't want you to know it. They want to give the impression that we all agree, we're all the same, and it's just absolutely not true. God has been good to me, and He's opened up a lot of doors for me to get the word out.
Thomas Sowell.
Yeah, Walter Williams, Thomas Sowell, a whole bunch of more out there.
Brilliant. Thomas Sowell was like the Hoover Institute. Brilliant man.
Yeah.
And he's hated by the black community.
They hate him. They hate Clarence Thomas and all them. But they are Larry. There are others out there. I'm not the only one. Yes, ma'am.
But you are not affiliated with another pastor or church that's preaching just like you do.
I know.
Are you affiliated with any? No.
I don't know any
of
of
it.
it.
On your own.
You're right. That's for pastors. I'm the only one that I'm aware of that's doing this. Isn't that something?
It is something.
But I'm having a ball. Really, I feel like the world is with me.
No, because they had the Black Liberation, meeting and conferences and all kind of stuff.
I've had over 400 and some black preachers on my radio station, and only 3 agreed somewhat with me. Wow. Isn't that amazing? Maybe 3. 4 out of the 400. Okay, anybody back here I missed? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I have to admit, I'm really afraid of the truth.
Yeah.
So I manipulate the truth.
Yeah.
I've been studying and writing about terrorism and counterterrorism for the past 15 years. So when my liberal friends and people I work with, and they ask me who I'm going to vote for, I just say, well, I don't really know, but I'm just going to vote for anybody who supports the war against terrorism.
Yeah.
And somehow that gets to them without telling the truth.
Yeah. So after.
No, what are they going to say? Oh, yeah, we're going to not fight against the war on terrorism.
So after today, you're not going to manipulate the truth anymore, right?
No, I'm going to manipulate the truth. I'm still scared. That's the truth. That's the truth. I'm scared of people I work with.
Why?
What would they do to you?
They're fired.
I've gotten fired for speaking.
I'm fired. They won't talk to me. I have signing. They wouldn't show up. They just.
But that's okay. Those are not your friends. Yeah, I'll come.
Okay.
Your friends will show up. Yes, sir.
If you would have 400 college professors on your program for interviews, you would have come away with 3 who agreed with you.
Right. I'm very familiar with them. You're absolutely right. I want to encourage you guys. I want to tell you that I had a good time today, and I hope you did.
Yes.
I really did.